Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Naturally, you want to keep up with all of these stories at tarpley.net and the Twitter feed Webster G. Tarpley on Twitter. And, of course, when you go to tarpley.net, make sure you buy one of the distinguished books that are offered there. Right now, Obama, the Postmodern Coup is looking pretty good as a, what can we say, accurate forecast of what the Obama administration would do. Issued about 3 years ago. A detailed section on the color revolution, the people power coup, the destabilization, the Brzezinski soft power, Joseph Nye, international crisis group methodology, Samantha Power, of course, part of it too. This is the basis of the foreign policy, the universal overthrow, the downfall of every nation-state in the world. Its balkanization, partition, reduction into tribal or regional or warlord or criminal enterprise status. So get that in Obama, the Postmodern Coup, the making of a Manchurian candidate, telling you plenty about Obama's mentality. But now back to our topic A, which is this emerging strategic constellation of Saudi Arabia and Pakistan, with Russia and China not even in the background, but increasingly in the foreground. The visit of Mullen has then been followed by General Pasha of the ISI, the Intelligence Bureau, coming here to Washington. Not much in public about that. We've also got the Foreign Minister Bashir meeting with Hillary Clinton, and some verbiage coming out of that, which I don't think means too much. The general pattern, I think, is clear. It's now a strategic combination, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan. It's a deterrent to anyone. Now, the deterrent is usually presented in the media as a deterrent against Iran, but I think even more against the United States, even more against color revolutions and similar destabilizations. That's the active attack on Saudi Arabia at this time. I know a lot of people don't like the Saudi regime. I don't like the Saudi regime either. But in this, you have to be a great realist. The big question to ask is, you see what there is, and it has its lights and shadows. They've just gotten, about $1 billion in social demands and wage increases. Right, the largesse of King Abdullah under duress has turned out to be quite substantial. The question you have to ask yourself is, what would come instead of this, right? You don't like the status quo. Great. What are the possible alternatives to the status quo? And I'm afraid the way I can see it, the array of possibilities on the ground in Saudi Arabia is that all the alternatives to the status quo are worse than the status quo. And you're seeing that in Egypt now, that you've gone out of the frying pan and into the fire in Egypt. And I think also in Tunisia, although perhaps that's less clear. Chaos in Tunisia, a military junta, a military dictatorship with martial law in Egypt that's throwing people in jail with less due process than Mubarak was giving them. Do you really want to bring that to Saudi Arabia? Or we can look at Libya, and we will in detail in a minute. But now you've got predator drones as the harbinger of democracy in Libya, killing people there too. We'll ask the Pakistanis what they think of those predator drones. Maybe the Pakistani Facebook people should get on the Facebook and Twitter and tweet to their friends in Libya, look, you don't want to have these rebels calling in NATO airstrikes and predator drones, because that's what Pakistan has been living with, and it is hell on earth. Remember also that in Pakistan, the U.S. goal is civil war. The entire purpose of this is civil war, as I've stressed repeatedly over recent years on this program. The goal is to export the Afghan civil war into Pakistan. That was the heart of the Obama West Point speech of December 2009. That is U.S. policy. They can see the ethnic breakdown. You have Sindh, you have Punjab, you have Baluchistan, you have Pashtunistan, you have some other areas. The idea is to fragment that, to break up this country and destroy it so that there will never be an energy corridor from Iran into China. There will never be the Gwadar port. There will never be the entire plan for a Pakistani energy corridor as a key piece of the development of Eurasia. The U.S. and the British simply don't want that. So any solution that makes that impossible is wonderfully welcome to the U.S. and the British. So I have repeated in recent weeks, we are probably not far from a shooting war between the Obama regime, the United States, and Pakistan. And people in Pakistan certainly might find maneuvers to avoid this by, for example, expelling the U.S. forces. Another form that it takes, of course, is that when you have the attacks on the supply line, right, this long supply line from the port of Karachi all the way up through Pakistan to the Khyber Pass, you have had some incidents in recent weeks where 75 trucks, 100 trucks have been destroyed by shadowy figures who then disappear. This obviously means that those U.S. forces in Afghanistan are very much at risk. I would recommend get them out. Don't let that become Stalingrad. Don't wait until they're encircled somehow. Get them out now. End this lunatic experiment in Afghanistan. Save yourself $500 billion a year and end that so that you remove the cause of friction, because you now have a latent war between the United States and Pakistan. It's a real war, but if that breaks out into public open shooting with fronts and so forth, this is going to be bad for everybody. So the U.S. should avoid this war by getting out of Afghanistan right now with all deliberate speed. Now let's turn to Libya. Here, the general line is the question of the humanitarian emergency, the question of civilian losses is becoming the new issue of weapons of mass destruction. Back in 2003, Bush Cheney demagogically lied that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. Today, the controlled media demagogically lying that the massacre of civilians, the humanitarian emergency, amounts to casus belli, the reason to go to war against Libya. So these press whores have learned absolutely nothing, or better yet, they're consciously carrying on the practices that they used back in 2003. So we're getting mission creep. For example, we're getting that in addition to the obvious presence of special forces, SAS, and other NATO commandos that have been in Libya since about the 23rd, 24th of February that we know of in large numbers. A whole boatload of them came in to Benghazi at that point. We now have the open dispatch, public, high-profile dispatch of British, French, and Italian officers. Now, this is not just SAS. This is not just special forces. What I see this is the Libyan rebels, this gaggle of terrorists and other fighters, are going to be organized in colonial regiments. In other words, those European officers, I'm sure the British ones are veterans of Belfast and all kinds of war crimes against the people of Ireland. They're going to organize them into colonial regiments with fuzzy wuzzies as the troops and the Europeans as the officers. And that's what the wonderful rebels are bringing, the rebels being stooges of imperialism. Back in a minute on World Crisis Radio.